Welcome to the Restoration Activation Project video commentary series. Hi, Mary Ann here. In the last commentary, I was exploring the what some people call this time of transition process, or the event, or the resetting, which is the process wherein our current cycle of consciousness evolution, along with various cosmic cycles, are sort of unwinding and coming to the convergence point of unfolding into their new iterations. And how this process, as these processes near their convergence points, there's a lot of energetic chaos. Various energies coming into our energy system, our solar system, all around us, flowing through us, through the people around us, both regressive and progressive energies. And there's a lot of energetic chaos right now. And as a result, many of us are experiencing various things that we've never experienced before. And some of these experiences can be rather intense. And so I also provided in the prior commentary a few tips and steps you can take, not only if you're caught off guard by one of these intense experiences, moving through the experience, but some tools you can use to be more prepared for the possibility of another type of event coming your way. So I hope you'll check that out. It's a helpful commentary. You'll get a little more common sense, some information about these processes at a kind of a baseline level, because the truth is, some of the information that is being put out right now on various sites online and so forth is, some of it can be very disturbing, and sometimes it can be misleading in other ways. So anyway, I think that commentary will be of benefit to those of you who have been curious about this process and might need a little help as you're experiencing some of these sometimes intense events. In this commentary, I'm going to continue sort of in that same vein, but with a little bit different angle. I'm going to give some examples, more examples of the kinds of experiences that I've had in recent times that are new and different for me in undergoing this process. But also, not only are they tied to this transition of evolution and cosmic cycles, but they're also tied to those of us doing the work of self-mastery attainment. And here's why and how. One of the primary target areas of the self-mastery process is the restoration aspect. The process of restoring the mind-body complex to its peak levels of performance in the areas of mental, emotional, physical capacities, restoring our energy centers and our energy fields to their peak performance levels. And as a part of that process, identifying and clearing out from the mind-body complex those things we carry within us that I refer to as distortions. Distortions being false beliefs, false ideologies, dogmas, concepts, and so forth, as well as egoic identifications and attachments, whether they be attachments to life roles, to substances, food, you know, whatever, alcohol, behavioral attachments, and so forth. Looking at looking into identifying core wound and healing, clearing those old energies, and learning how to get a handle on that, on and on, from a moving forward, from that point. Our other shadow aspects of ourselves, and so on and so forth. But these are what I call distortions. And I call them distortions because they distort the lenses through which we view ourselves, others, the events going on around us, and reality itself. They distort our perceptions, our highest ability to accurately perceive all of these things. And I also refer to them as distortions because they distort the flow of higher order knowledge, the higher order energies, the inflow of those things. Being able to fully embody core self knowings and wisdoms and capacities and so forth in the mind-body complex. To be able to fully embody that, they create energetic bottlenecks and sometimes complete blockages that not only distort our abilities to function at full capacity, to fully transduce soul, core self, inner self, whatever you choose to call that, higher order consciousness, higher levels of awareness, but they can also and do create physical disorders. So it's very important. It's a key part, the restoration part. There's a couple of other aspects to the restoration of the mind-body complex, but that's the big body of that work. So distortions. And so getting back to the event. So some of us are experiencing some strange new things as a result of the unfolding of these, going into these, ending various cycles and going into new ones. But not only that, those of us who are doing the work of self-mastery, this can also occur. I mean, that contributes as well, especially now as we're going through this transitional process of our reality and ourselves. Because the work of self-mastery, when you start clearing distortions, you gain access to higher levels of awareness. That's the whole point of going through the restoration process, to expand our levels of awareness, to be able to begin embodying the higher order knowledge, tapping more into the inner knowing that we already have within us in this mind-body complex. But it all begins with a higher level of awareness. So, if your level of awareness is increasing, then wouldn't that likely contribute to perhaps a different experiential level, the ability to perhaps sense energetically, or perhaps even see different things that you weren't seeing before? And a good street example of this, you know, daily life example. You know, if you've been through the process of buying a new, or at least new to you, car, and perhaps you've narrowed it down to a couple of different models, types of cars that you're looking at, and you begin, you know, you're thinking about it, you're researching, getting information, you're looking at a lot of pictures, and then when you go out and about in the world, perhaps when you're driving your existing car, you're with somebody else, you're walking on the streets or whatever, you suddenly become aware of, it's like everywhere you turn, you start seeing these one or two different models of cars that you've been researching, considering. And it's because you have given focused attention to these cars. It's not that there's suddenly more of them on the streets, but your awareness has been expanded. So now you're seeing them. So that's a good everyday example of how this works. So in doing the self-mastery work, focused attention to expanding your awareness, then chances are some of us are going to be seeing and experiencing new and different things because that work is in progress in conjunction with the transitional process, the cycles winding down and coming to their convergence points to begin unfolding into their new iterations. All this stuff is going on at once. So just kind of makes sense that some of us are going to be experiencing not just perhaps more intense type of experiences, but things that are completely new to us. So that's kind of the angle I'm looking at it from today. You know, we're being exposed to the energies of cyclic transition as well as doing the self-mastery process and some of these experiences. And I'm going to give a few examples of the different kinds of experiences that I've been having and, you know, different areas of experience. In the last commentary, I looked into basically a wave of what I quickly determined was primarily regressive, but just a lot of mixed energy, regressive dominant, and how I was able to come through that, and the tools that I use to, that I'm using now. I was using them anyway, but I've just sort of ramped up things. But check out that commentary. There's a lot of helpful information about tools and techniques that you can use. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch this video and then go back to that one for some tips and tools. But so now I'm going to talk for just a minute about our reality and what it really is and how that relates. It could well be relating to some of your experiences. This reality is multiple density, multiple dimensions, just like we are. We were built to move between multiple densities and dimensions, perhaps even parallel versions of this reality. And some people say that the densities and dimensions are in our energy system, our solar system, and I call it an energy system because that's the way I view it, and it's important. And the more you watch my videos, the more you will begin ingraining that in yourself, I hope, because it's very helpful to do that. But multiple densities and dimensions, some believe, you know, up to 6, perhaps 7 densities, dimensions, and others believe as many as 12. I personally don't know. You might have your own better personal inner knowing, or you've received higher order knowledge or whatever, but I just know there are multiple. densities and dimensions because I have experienced enough things to be able to determine that much, direct experience. So, although we refer to our current density dimension, let me remind you, density refers to level of awareness. And awareness of what? Awareness of what we are, or if you're another being, what you are, what reality really is, and how it all really works. Awareness of higher order knowledge. That's what density refers to. Dimension is sort of that is the venue that unfolds and flows from density. Sort of the creational playing field. And the two are intimately interconnected, as we are, to reality, this reality as a whole, and all of that. But, if you do much research and you spend much time going to various people's websites and listening to videos or reading or whatever, many are very aware. There's a lot of people who have really highly sensitive energy systems and so forth, that our reality that we refer to as 3DD, third density, third dimension, well, that's not really true. That is a perception that has been entrained within us through mind conditioning, social engineering, genetic tampering, and all of those imply, all the things that those imply. That is our current level, for the most part, perception of what the baseline density dimension in our reality really is, which is fourth density and dimension. And so what more and more people, as part of their experiences through self-mastery work, the unfoldment of these, the winding down of the cycles, unfolding into new evolution and cosmic cycles and so forth, some of the things they're experiencing relate to fourth density, fourth dimension perceptions. A lot of people say that the fourth density is coming in. Well, the fourth density is here. It's just that we have been so regressed for so long that most of us are unable to perceive from a fourth density, fourth dimension perspective. It's not that it went away. It's just that our capacity to see and experience directly, we see and we experience it all the time. We just don't know that that's what we're experiencing, but it's coming more and more into the forefront for those who are awakening, for those who are gaining perhaps, special abilities are awakening within them, or just higher, sensitivity, energetic sensitivity, which in turn can also, it opens our eyes. It helps, it also, as we go through the cleaning and clearing process of restoring the mind-body complex, even our physical senses become more keen. So a number of things going on here that are enabling more and more of us to experience from a fourth density, fourth dimension perspective our reality. Some of the, or I should say, in the, well, let me give a couple examples of what I know, for me personally, are directly tied to 4DD experiences. That's what they are, because there is no third DD frames of reference for these things. None. And the first one is revolves around time. Some of the experiences I've been having a lot in the last few years, again, not only a result of the time of transition unfolding, the event, but the work that I do, the self-mastery work that I do on myself. And I can't tell you how many times, and sometimes for really long stretches, it's virtually like time is standing still for me in a good way. In other words, there have been times where it was really important for me to step back from some of the day-to-day 3D grind of getting along and focus more on this process. And that's what I experienced because I was committed to that. And so, you know, perhaps I wanted to get something accomplished because I thought I only had a day or so to do it, when I suddenly found that I had more time to do it, or was able to accomplish what I thought would take several days in less than one day. So those kind of things around time. Another experience of time that is very revealing, a great symptom of you, if you will, as to what's going on around us and through us, is compressed time. Some of the experiences, perhaps, again, I'll refer to myself, some of my own self-work. I know recently I was working through a really big, virtually lifelong distortion, or that I'd been working on for my whole life and making progress steadily, but suddenly, in doing work around this specific issue, time became compressed. An issue from which I just knew would take me years to recover, in just a matter of months. And I mean fully recovered. I can go back and look at the issue and many pieces involved in it, primarily around relationships, and view it in such a way that I know I'm healed, but within a very compressed amount of time. Or another example is that even some of the big issues that we maybe have worked through or we've made good progress on, sometimes you maybe even think that you have worked through it completely, but then all these little things, boom, 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 just start coming at you all at once, start coming to the surface, and you just feel, sometimes overwhelmed, perhaps. Again, this compressed time, these energies, the energies of the work that you're doing on yourself, the self-mastery work, the energies around you related to the transitional process. Things are being brought to the surface in a compressed fashion many times for many people. And that's why so many have been feeling overwhelmed, or perhaps extremely exhausted. Or you'll look back over the course of a day and you'll go, did all of that really happen in just one day? And it can be really overwhelming and tiring, both physically and mentally. Plus, your body is trying to adapt to some of the new energies. I say new energies, energies that are coming back into our system that we've been cut off from for so long. And now they're basically forcing their way back in. That's good. But it can be very tiring as we go through this, especially if you're not doing self-mastery work. It can be, you can become almost tired to the point of being debilitated by it. I know. I work with people who are not going through this process. I know people who are not going through this. And when you don't have any understanding of what's going on around you, any higher order understanding, and you're not doing self-work, if either of those two things is not in place, neither of those two things, then how frustrating that must be to suddenly feel these weird energetic things. Your body's just exhausted. You're just overwhelmed. You're frustrated. All these things are going on around you. People are acting squirrely. You see all these events in the world unfolding, these volatile events, and people doing these really extreme things, and you're trying to process it, or you're completely trying to shut it out, shut it down, which is not altogether a good idea either. But imagine, what those people are going through. And it does matter. You say, well, what does that have to do with me? Well, it has a lot to do with you, because their energies are being put out into our reality as well. Their frustrations, their exhaustion, and their depressed feelings around all of this. It's all out there, people. It's all out there, and all of this is coming at us. We're not islands. So all in all, this can be a very intense time. But time, with reference to time, so that's affected. And also with regard to time, fourth density dimension, time does still exist. Timelines flow through fourth density. But there is a much quicker cause and effect dynamic. And a lot of people are experiencing that. Say or do one thing, and then you get almost immediate, or so to speak, instant karma. Think of it in terms of, think of your dreams, the dream state. Well, if you're not just in dreaming through the subconscious, most of the time, you're out in the astral realms. And think about your dreams. Doesn't take any time. You think something, or you say something, or you think about a different place, boom, you're there. Or it's happening. The circumstances and unfoldments in your dream state are virtually instantaneous. Well, that's fourth density. And so more of us are experiencing that sped up cause and effect dynamic. Especially if you're going through the self-mastery process, because you're also cleaning out distortions, increasing your levels of awareness. So you're more attuned to and likely to experience different things, or things that you were unable to see or experience before, because your level of awareness is expanded. Come into your field of experience. Your capacity to perceive and experience these things is heightened when you're doing this work. And especially at this time, with all these cycles unfolding, winding down and beginning to unfold. So, time. I gave a couple of general examples of how time has been affecting me, both from a compressed perspective, also as well as a sense of being able to control time based on what I'm emitting, to extend and expand. And to some of you, that might sound crazy. Well, I don't care. I've experienced it. I cannot tell you how many times over the last 10 years, participating in that process consciously, and not from a thought perspective, but from a higher order energetic perspective. And I don't mean the energy of thought or the energy of emotion. I'm talking about the energy of consciousness, vital energy, pure awareness coming together, moving through me. And because I, quote, needed time to be expanded without thinking of that consciously, I co-created in that process of it unfolding for me. So contemplate that. Even if that seems like a big stretch for you, I dare you to contemplate it. Experiment with it yourself. And see what unfolds for you. Another direct, time-related, two of them, within the course of less than a month between them. Actually, I think it was only a week or two between the two events. Very similar. But before I tell you about the two different events that were new to me, but very revealing in regards to their relationship to time, is the fact that there isn't just one timeline moving through our reality. There are multiple timelines. And there are multiple versions of this reality, and they each have multiple timelines. I don't know how many, but there's multiple timelines. And if you think about it for a minute, it makes sense. When you consider, if you have a knowing, and maybe you don't yet, a knowing of if at least not at least reincarnation, that cycle, but there's also different versions of us beyond the reincarnation cycle. Whatever you think of the reincarnation cycle, and it's been hijacked or imposed on us, not a natural part of this reality to begin with. Whatever you believe about it, if you understand that there is some kind of a process, and if you understand that time in itself really does not exist except in some of the lower densities. When you start getting into probably 6th or 7th and higher, time does not exist. All is now. Everything is unfolding at the same time. There's multiple versions of you. That means you exist in multiple places on different timelines. There would have to be different timelines if everything's unfolding at once. And that's the truth of this reality too. Just read physics. Time doesn't exist. Time is an illusion. Time is a tool. Time is a result of our limited, forced into being 3D perspectives and perceptions. Our experience of time, even in a timeline, as being linear is incredibly limited. Because even when time is a part of the reality, time is not linear. It's backwards, forwards. It is not this linear progression. Even you and I are affecting the unfoldments of whatever timelines we're moving through. Most of us have a primary timeline along which we're moving. And let me give you a few examples of that. Every time you project your consciousness back in time, aka you have a memory, that's what you're doing. You're projecting consciousness back in time, into the past. That's what that is. That's what you're doing. And more often than not, our memories vary at least a little bit, or at least looking at an event, a past event, from a little bit different perspective than we did the last time we remembered the event. All of those things impact the outflowing of time, the time moving forward from that point, the point of that past memory. We're affecting that, and most of the time it's very subtle. It's not enough to cause any major changes, but there are things you can do if you wish to jump timelines and so forth. You can play with that too. Experiment. I'll make a video commentary about just that one thing down the road to give you more details into what I'm talking about. And when you project, let's say you do envisioning, if you're into the creation, you're trying to generate more money for yourself, and you do envisioning work. You focus on what you want your future to look like, or something you want to have in your future. You're projecting yourself into the future, your consciousness into the future. That affects time and timelines as well. You've just probably never looked at it from that angle. But that's what you're doing. You're focused on moving yourself from the current trajectory you're on to a new trajectory point, which is a branch of time, a new branch of a timeline. That's what you're doing. So we do have and interact with time all the time. And now with all these things going on, we're becoming more aware of fourth density, tuning more into our fourth density, our capacities to perceive fourth density, and to begin seeing things from a fourth density, fourth dimension perspective. So the two experiences I had were very similar, almost uncannily similar, and I haven't quite figured that part out yet, but they both involved people driving cars. Again, one more backtrack. As we unfold, as our reality is unfolding into new cycles, the cosmic energetic cycles, and this time of transition to a new evolution cycle, timelines are being affected. Many out there, many reliable sources are talking about bifurcations of timeline. Well, I believe there's going to be trifurcations and quadrifurcations, and maybe more. This is going on all the time, but especially as we near the end of these cycles. And I've mentioned this before, but it's a good analogy. Think of this process where the end of cycles are beginning to converge, and it's a process. It's not a light switch thing. Converging into the unfoldment of their next iterations, time is also being affected. Timelines are being affected. And there's a lot of reliable information out there that And some people are seeing it as if there aren't already perhaps multiple timelines in our reality, and there are. You're just not aware. You're in a timeline. Mostly, you're in moving along a primary timeline, but you're jumping around. If you're doing anything at all, if you ever contemplate, you sit back and think, and like I said, you really go back into memories, your consciousness is moving around time and jumping timelines. That's what you're doing, because it is all about consciousness. So-called time travel isn't all about mind-body complex moving. Consciousness. Consciousness. Projecting consciousness. For example, the internet. The internet is just a mechanical representation of an ability that every original human had. Many of us still do, and we'll awaken to it. But telepathy, connecting with anyone in the world at any moment, being able to communicate. And I need to do a whole commentary about technology, and I'm not going to get into all that now, but I'm going to be doing that, and it's fascinating stuff, and stuff that you really need to know. But anyway, we're moving, some of us more than others, moving between timelines in different places on a timeline, depending upon what we're thinking about, what we're focused on, particularly, just if you spend just, a minute or two thinking about something, remembering something, or projecting into the future, then the less impact there is. The more time you spend, and this is why so many of us get stuck in the past. We can't ever seem to move past because we're constantly thinking of the past, which keeps us in that same regressive trajectory. We lock ourselves in. Granted, it's based on a lot of conditioning and all this other stuff going on right now, but we keep ourselves stuck in this same regressive time trajectory. And you have a say-so in that. And that's some of the work I do with clients. Yeah. So, now getting back to two experiences I had related to time and stuff going on, this transitional process, and the work that I'm doing with myself. They both involved cars being driven by individuals. The first experience, I was at someone else's home, and they live in a high-rise, and I was looking out, standing out on the balcony, looking around, and at ground level, coming out of the parking garage of this complex, as you first exit the garage, there is a wall, a petition, for a certain, for so many, probably, I don't know, 100, 150 feet. And then it opens into just pavement. So looking down at this, there was this obstruction, but I heard, and it caught my attention because it was a very loud car. It had a loud engine. And so I was drawn to it because of the sound. And it's moving really quickly. And as it moves past the petition that keeps you from seeing it at first, even at a higher level, I couldn't see the vehicle until it moved beyond this partition, this wall. And I saw this car moving pretty quickly. A young man was driving it. Black hair, a collared shirt, a very distinct car. It was an older model. Again, making a loud noise. I can't remember the model of it, but I think it was an older Toyota, maybe a Camry. Anyway, the paint was not in good shape. It was black. It was very, you could see, that it needed paint work. And anyway, it's zipping along. This guy's arm, the window's open. His arm is resting over the opening of the window onto the door. And zippity-doo, he goes, and he gets to the street and turns right and disappears out of my view. Well, in less than it was probably 6 to 8 seconds later, I hear that same distinct engine, the sound of that engine zipping along. I'm just dumbfounded. I hear this. It's like, I couldn't figure out. And then the car, as it moves past the partition wall, it's the same, not a similar, it's the same car. Same driver. Moving along, but this time he's got music playing and it's loud and he's moving his arms. He's wearing a different shirt. The shirt he was wearing before was a dark gray or navy, very dark, more like he was dressed for work. He was wearing a bright yellow t-shirt, short sleeves, baseball cap, and just rocking along, the music going. Same car, just the same noise, same model of car. I couldn't believe my eyes. And then, like I said, within a matter of a week, just a week or two later, I was at home. Very similar type of experience, again, involving a car. As I look out over in a particular direction, looking off my own balcony, there is a line of small trees and hedges. And yes, you can see movement through it when there's a vehicle moving through, but again, pretty opaque. And after a certain point, it moves past this wall of shrubbery, trees, and you can see the car. It just opens into pavement, and you can see the car. Well, this car wasn't loud. It was just driving along. It was a car that I'd seen before, either someone who lives here or visits fairly regularly, someone who does live here. And it's moving at a fairly good click, but not as fast as the first vehicle I was describing. And I don't think anything about it. It's just moving along, and I see it, and then it's out of my view because it goes behind another building. And again, within 6 to 8 seconds, I see not a similar car, but the same car, same color, same make, same model, same person. Except in this case, the person was wearing, if not exactly the same clothing, this time it was a woman, but something very similar. It happened quickly enough, and I was caught off guard enough that I didn't have the same amount of time before the car went out of my view to assess it like I had in the first situation I described. I had a little more time to see and make note of the similarities and differences. In this case, I didn't have as much time. But both of those, in my opinion, reflecting some sort of glitch or shift in the timeline, or in my experience of the timeline, where I am on the timeline. I don't know exactly, but it was definitely related to timelines. I know this. At a number of levels. Did some exploring, checking into higher order knowledge, and in addition to inner knowing. And it's somehow related to time, perhaps some glitch. Well, think of the movie The Matrix. And I'm not saying it was exactly like that, but the scene wherein they've been to see, and any of you have watched this, you know the scene. They've been to see the Oracle, and they're leaving. They're heading back to this building, you know, the heart of the city building, to get back on the phone. And as they're moving, getting ready to go upstairs, Neo makes a comment that, you know, about the cat. And they ask him, you know, was it the same cat, or, you know, what was it, a different cat or the same cat? And so that sort of thing, that double take thing. And I know many of you have been experiencing things like this. And at first you just kind of blow it off, depending upon how focused, how aware, and how present-minded you are, determines your ability to perceive these kinds of things. Because if you're distracted and you're not in the present moment and not being mindful, this is how we miss a lot of stuff. Those two things alone. You're juggling 50 different things in your mind. You're so-called multitasking, which isn't true anyway. We can't really do that. There's one primary focus, and you might be juggling things on the side, but you're moving back and forth. There's no such thing as really multitasking. You're moving back and forth quickly between a lot of different things. And in this case, I'm talking about thoughts, or maybe even activities. And so we miss a lot of stuff by not being in the present moment and mindful. So the more you start practicing that, and that's a core fundamental practice of the self-mastery attainment process, getting really strong in that, because that lays the groundwork for clearing thoughts and emotions and all these other distortions that we carry. Focused presence, awareness. So as many of us move through this process in this work, while this transition is going on around us and through us, it just makes sense that we're going to be experiencing some new things that have probably been going on around us for some time. But our level of awareness keeps expanding. Our capacity to perceive these things is increasing. So look back at recent experiences you've had that might be related to time, some sort of glitch or quick shift in time, those kind of things. Another, people talk online about this a lot, is the Mandela effect, you know, or, so look that up if you're not familiar with it. But the Mandela effect, and one of the most popular references to that, not just Mandela himself and his history and all that, but the Berenstain Bears, look up all that. Those are other examples of timeline glitches and shifts. And oftentimes, these higher density beings they're the ones doing the biggest messing with. Whether it be beings from the future coming back, present time, so-called present time beings manipulating, beings from the past moving between timelines, whatever, a variety of things. But look into that a little bit, because some of what you may be experiencing, witnessing firsthand, are related to time and timelines. Because again, a lot of this stuff is in a state of flux. So keep that in mind. Another type of experience that I've had has to do with the intensity of entity interference as well as interventions and synchronicities. They're more intense, both sides. So, and one of the recent experiences I had involved both, all intermixed. And it was fascinating, and it was the kind of experience I'd never really had. I'd had, you know, um, synchronicities and or, progressive experiences or regressive experiences. Something would happen, and then, you know, the the other kind of experience would happen close on the heels of that. But these, progressive and regressive sort of mixed in as part of the same experience was new for me. I had been, one of the more common regressive entity interferences that a lot of us experience relate to technology. Technological glitches, you're working online, maybe you're trying to upload a video, or you're trying to post an article, or just generally using your computer and stuff happens. And as a part of you that knows that, and especially when you step back and look at what in particular it is you're doing, you can often make direct connections and in terms of timing of interferences and so forth. Well, that's what had happened to me. It was a technological interference. And in the prior commentary, I described how the energy around it was so powerful and so intense that I basically got knocked off center. It was as if, and I use the observer perspective, but this took it to almost a surreal level, where I literally was watching myself go through this, and it was eliciting and interjecting really intense levels of fear around the kind of thing that I've undergone countless times. So I was just watching. I was stunned, was mesmerized, watching myself, observing the fear being ramped up in my body, and was just mesmerized by it, to the point where I didn't step in and take control of it. It was just like, this is such a new level. As I said, I was almost mesmerized by it. And I could not comprehend the level of fear that was moving through me, because it was so out of proportion to the technological interference that I was experiencing. And because I was, quote, sort of kept from myself and responding quickly enough, I ended up having to spend a little chunk of money to get my computer cleaned up and so forth. It was ridiculous because I was so caught off guard. But it threw me, because this was so new and different for me, so intense and so surreal. Again, watching this stuff happening, knowing, I've been through these kind of experience before, was always right on top of it, but it was so intense that it was surreal. The level of fear was so unnatural and so out of proportion to what was actually happening, the technological interference itself, and all a mix of energies. I was just overwhelmed and literally gasping. But so it threw me for a while. It really threw me. I had to undergo this. I had to get on the phone, make sure that this interference hadn't really messed up my computer. And like I said, it cost me a chunk of change to make sure of this. And I'm not money bags. But it just left me so unsettled, because I also had to make a call to a financial institution to make sure that, my accounts hadn't been interfered with and all of that stuff. So it was a number of hours, and it was because I was having to deal with the aftermath of this, I still hadn't regrouped because I'd been so caught off guard that I still was not in a place of centeredness. And so finally get all of the baseline stuff that I needed to deal with, got all that covered. And it's late, I haven't eaten, so I decide that, okay, I'm going to just relax now. I'm not even going to try to, I was working on getting back to a place of quieting thoughts and all that, but I was starving. I needed to eat, and I thought I'm just going to eat, pardon me, and I'm going to watch some movie. I don't know. And I have, I keep some movies on my DVR, and I just was scrolling down. It's like, okay, what am I going to watch? And just landed on this one movie. And I'm waiting for, I had put my dinner in the oven and waiting for that to finish cooking. And just a few minutes into this movie, I wasn't really watching it. I basically had zoned it down into background so that I could begin working on myself in terms of centeredness. So I was aware, but I wasn't focused on. I do this a lot. I do it out, when I'm shopping or even when I'm in conversations with people. I'm aware, I'm alert and aware, but it is not the center of my focus. But I'm perfectly alert and aware and learning to walk that line. But anyway, so this is what I was working on in that moment. And my focused attention was drawn quickly to the movie because I heard my name, Marianne. And so I rewound. It's like, I had heard, I knew what I heard, but it was, I want to pay closer attention. This is kind of bizarre. My name. And so I rewind, and I think I made a note because what was being said was so powerful. And forgive me for not having this down in front of me. But here we go. Right back here. Bear with me again. I'm not a professional videographer. I'm just a regular guy. Okay, here we go. And I ended up writing them down because they were so pertinent to what had just been happening with me. So the movie's just getting started. And I hear, "Wake up, Marianne. We're home." Well, that was sort of creepy to begin with. We? Who's we? Just a couple of minutes later. So then I start watching the movie. The next line I hear is, and it's given as a warning from one character to another, and so it's in a stern voice. "Marianne, don't go too far." Now, getting back to the technological interference that I had, this all occurred around a particular article that I had worked on, one of my big essays, and I was trying to post it. It covers a lot of really important information that a lot of people may or may not know. It goes in depth and says who's who and what's what. It was while I was trying to post that article. So, again, pay attention to what you're doing, what's going on when interferences or interventions, synchronicities occur. That's important. So again, I hear that line, and then just a couple of lines later, "Take care, Marianne." And then again, this is all in fairly rapid sequence during the course of just a few minutes in the movie, early on in the movie. Then it's goodbye, Marianne, wherein one character is making sure that Marianne leaves. And Marianne in this movie is a teenage girl struggling with the loss of her parents. She's gone to live with her grandparents, and other things unfold. And you can verify this information for yourself. The name of the movie is The Harvest, and it's got Samantha Morton, Michael Shannon. They just made a couple of years ago, I believe. So you can verify what I'm telling you verbatim. Well, so those 4 lines, I'm feeling this. It's like, this is pretty much in my face. And I had similar experiences. I've heard lines from not just movies, but songs, or someone walking on the street. I'll just be walking by, or they'll be walking by me, and I'll overhear a phrase or even a word. They're not speaking to me, but I hear it, and it's like, that's for me, because of where I am and what I'm working and processing, or maybe what's going on in my life at that time. So this kind of thing isn't new to me, but to hear your name, my name being spoken in each of these lines. Well, by then, I've put the movie on pause because my dinner is ready. And so I get my dinner and I decide to continue watching the movie while I eat. And so the movie goes on and on. The character's name, she's interacting with other people, but her name doesn't get spoken again until almost the end of the movie. And, and I'm again, I basically put this in the background. I'm alert and I'm aware of what's being said, but it's not the focus. I'm focused and moving through, processing through consciousness. So I'm not processing thought, spoken word. I'm just there. I'm enjoying my dinner, and the movie's almost over. And in the last few minutes of the movie, again, boom, snapped out. I hear, follow your heart, Marianne. Follow your heart. Exactly like that. And it was the grandfather speaking to the granddaughter. But again, my name. Follow your heart, Marianne. Follow your heart. Knowing that this was a progressive intervention, synchronicity, call it what you will. As a counterbalance, it's like the troops came in for me. It's like, we're here because, let me backtrack a little bit, and then there's one more line that I'll give you in just a minute. But when I had heard these, I mentioned other, past experiences where I've heard, a phrase from, a song or other people speaking, and I know it's for me. It was always synchronistic. It was not a regressive. It was not a regressive entity. So the first lines that I heard in this movie, in fact, when I was first letting them move through me, I'm just assuming that they're supportive. And then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, wake up, Marianne, we're home. And then the threatening tone of the character when she spoke the other lines. Marianne, don't go too far. Take care, Marianne. Goodbye, Marianne. It was like, this is negative stuff. You can't make it out to be otherwise, Marianne, as much as you might want to. But so that was new for me. But then at the end of the movie, again, it's follow your heart, Marianne. Follow your heart, which is all about my work. Staying in there, because it's tough to stay in there, and working to stay afloat in the real world, and the many things I have to juggle to be able to do this, and, take care of myself in 3DD. So the final line was, keep your eye on the ball, Marianne. Keep your eye on the ball, Marianne. She was playing baseball, but very powerful. All of it very intense, very specific to me, very in my face. All of it. This chain of events. I've never had so many so compressed in such a short amount of time. My past experiences typically, and I have a lot of in-your-face experiences, both progressive and regressive, but it's usually an event and then a gap of time. But this was like multiple events compressed over the course of only, we're just talking a few hours. Whoosh, boom. So that was very new to me. And it was amazing. And I'm sure many of you are experiencing similar type things. And one thing I want to talk about before I wrap this up, and I'll talk about it quickly, is going back to distortions. A key, not so good distortion is attachments and ego identifications. And many of us, and I have done this in the past, I have, because sometimes it's hard not to, but identifying with our experiences, holding on to them, creates distortions. When we identify with and define ourselves by our experiences, we are limiting severely the flow of higher order knowledge and consciousness, awareness. We're limiting all of that. And it can be a really quick path to some serious energetic blockages when we identify with and hold on to experiences. So, and that happens a lot because sometimes some of you out there are experiencing some things that are really challenging. Perhaps alien-related stuff, abductions, and that sort of thing, some really big stuff. And it's extremely difficult, especially if you're undergoing a string of them. And if you don't have the right tools to pull yourself through that. And it's easy to get stuck and then attached to the point where you begin identifying with and defining yourself by or through these experiences. And when we do that, we self-sabotage. We're cutting ourselves off at the knees when we do that. This is not about minimizing or saying that these experiences aren't important, because they are. They're all part of this. And they're all exciting. Even if unpleasant, it's like, wow, this is all part of it. And I want to get on this wave and learn how to ride it, not get sucked under. But it is about awareness and experience and expanding, continually expanding that. So in order to expand our awareness, how can we do that unless we're having new experiences and making note of them and looking at them and learning from them, and then moving past them to the next. So I just felt it was important. I talk about that a lot, but many people, more and more people are having experiences, and I should say, people who have been having them are now talking about them, and they weren't talking about them before. And there are a lot of sites that are around for people to do that, a lot of social media sites. And be aware of that too. And that can be a really good thing. It's important to be able to have a place or someone to talk to these things about, but be careful on these social media sites. First of all, about what you might be sharing, with whom. And some of these sites are designed to keep people in victim or even progressive experience mode so that they become seeing themselves as their experiences. So a word of caution there. Don't allow yourself to be defined by, identified with, and thus attached to any of these experiences. Step back and look at them. See the wonder of them, even those that aren't progressive, even those that are regressive in nature. And that's another way you work through your fear anyway. If you have fear around it, this is one way to do it, to look at it from the point of higher order principles. This is part of the balancing process. Or because I'm making progress, complementary energies are interested in me. Because I am making progress. Higher order principles. Zooming out. Fear eliminators. Fear decreases, 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 decreases until it's gone. It's like, okay, this is just part of moving through life in this reality and what's going on and the changes I'm choosing to undertake in my life, my self-mastery process. This is just all part of it. It's just another experience. You don't give it your power. You don't give your power away to it, I should say. You don't allow it to define you because it is not who you are. So keep all that stuff in mind, and I am going to call this commentary a wrap on that note. I hope it's been a benefit to you. If any of you are having perhaps more extreme experiences that you're having, or higher frequency of experiences, and you just feel like you're sort of losing ground, struggling to come out and move through them, contact me. You don't have to go through it alone. Not only someone just to talk to and share with, because many of us don't have anyone to share these things with, but someone who can help you find tools with which to keep yourself uplifted and moving through and beyond these experiences. And if you find if you found this commentary helpful, I hope you'll visit my website if you're viewing this on YouTube. Pardon me. And get more familiar with my work if you are new to me and my work. And in any case, I wish all of you the best on your journeys. Take care. And until I see you next time, bye-bye.